All right, everybody. Well, good afternoon. My name is Blair Nickel with FranNet, and today we're talking about an option that's in front of you. Most of you on this meeting are probably either in the states of Montana, Idaho, maybe Nevada, maybe other places, but primarily for those from those areas. And you're at a fork in the road. You got a choice to make. So when you're going through a career transition, which is primarily who we have worked with over the past 30 years. You can go the option of, hey, am I going to look at a traditional job search, or hey, is now my opportunity to kind of take a different path? I've always thought about business ownership, which is obviously what we're going to talk about today, or maybe it's some other choice. But today we're going to talk about that path of business ownership and franchise ownership, so you can kind of learn more about it and kind of see if it's an option that you really want to entertain. So like I said, today won't be able to answer all of your questions, but it should be able to answer quite a bit, enough where you're able to say, okay, is this something that I think I really want to entertain? And if so, now I know what my next steps are ahead of me. So a little bit about me. I've been in business and franchise ownership my entire career. So I'm one of those rare animals out there. I was born and raised that no matter what I do, never, ever, ever have a traditional job. So that's the way my dad raised me. I did have a traditional job for about a year. Is how long it lasted for me. And I very quickly realized why my dad taught me to do something different. But yeah, so I've always owned my own companies, always been in franchising, and I've always been helping people go into business and franchise ownership. So mainly that has been with a company called FranNet. And like Chip mentioned, FranNet's been working with LHH Harrison for about 30 years. We have literally helped thousands and thousands and thousands of LHH Harrison candidates transition from their former job into business and franchise ownership, if that's a path that they really want to take a look at. As you can see on that list, I've owned multiple businesses and franchises over the years. I still own multiple businesses and franchises today, but primarily where I spend most of my time is helping people go into business and franchise ownership. And it's really neat to watch people go from a very educational webinar or meeting such as this to literally, if all goes well, and this is something you really want to dive into now, 2 to 4 months from now, you can be the owner of your own business and you're off and running. So we're going to talk about today, why do people go into business ownership? Why do people not go into business ownership? So kind of what are the risks and rewards? What are the different options for going into business? And really there's 3 main options for going into business, and we'll look at the pros and cons of each of those methodologies. Then we'll go into kind of franchising specifically, because that's usually the way most of our clients want to proceed. And the reason is because most of our clients have never owned a business before, and they kind of want that playbook or recipe to follow so that they can most likely be successful in their business venture. And then we'll talk about, okay, if you're going to go into business or franchise ownership, how do you find the business or franchise that's right for you out of the sea of franchises that are out there? And then we'll got to give you the tools necessary to kind of keep marching forward if it's something you want to do. But like I said, you got a question, just take yourself off of mute and ask away. So basically what FranNet does is our clients come to us saying, hey, I think I want to be in business ownership. Hey, I think franchising is the business format that's going to be best for me because I want that kind of playbook to follow. And typically, like I said, our clients have never been in business before. And so what's nice is our job is to help match you up with the right franchises based on who you are, your goals, your aspirations, your skill sets, your personality, your budget. And we are paid by the companies out there. So we are of no cost to you. So we, like I said, including LHH Harrison and all the other resources that refer clients to us, we have helped tens of thousands of people go into this. I've helped probably over somewhere between 500 and 700 people here go into business and franchise ownership over the years. So one of the questions I usually like to ask the group, and you don't have to answer this now, but what you want to ask yourself is, what brought you here today? Okay, so like I said, most people are raised to not go into business. Most people are raised to go get a job, land that job, stay in that job as long as possible, sock away for retirement, retire, and have some fun. And eventually, I guess there's an end one day. But that's the way most people are raised. So, but there's something that kind of scratched an itch for you where you said, hey, I think I might want to take a look at business ownership. All right. And what you have to be honest with yourself is, what's your why? Why did you really kind of raise your hand as to why this is something you really want to consider? And no matter what business you go into, it has to solve that why. Otherwise, you shouldn't do it. Okay, but everybody kind of has different reasons for wanting to go into business ownership. And these are usually the main reasons that we hear from our clients, is whether it's more success or financial independence or no more layoffs, or they want greater control. It's many, many different reasons, but every single one of us in this meeting today kind of has different reasons or different desires as to why we're considering business ownership as a possible career choice. Yet most people, so there's about, I don't know, 15 of us on this meeting today, okay? If every single one of you came to me and said, Blair, I have the money, I have the power, I have the desire, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm a 10 or 11 on wanting to go into business ownership. In other words, you're going to do it and there's nothing stopping you. Statistically, about 5 of you out of the 15 will actually do it, okay? So yet what stops people from actually doing it? And by far and away, it's risk, okay? It's this right here. The unfortunate part about going into business ownership is that you're suddenly talking about taking some of your own money, your own time, and in a sense, gambling with it. Because the unfortunate part about business and franchise ownership is there is no guaranteed result. Whereas if we land a job today, we'll most likely have a paycheck in the next week or two, right? And there probably wasn't a whole lot of money invested in going to land a job. There might be some time, maybe some networking events, things like that. But when you go into business ownership, yes, it does require capital and it does require time. And so a lot of people might feel that a job is safer than a business. Or, hey, they might be worried about the economy. I mean, look at the economy we're in right now. I'm not sure what type of economy we're in right now, to be honest with you. You hear all kinds of different stories and theories out there, but maybe people have a concern about the economy, or do they have the money or knowledge or skill sets to go into business? But by far and away, it's risk that stops people from going into business. And so kind of what one of my goals here today is to kind of show you how to close this window of risk as much as possible, so that you feel safe about going into business ownership. Because if you don't feel safe about going into the business that you're wanting to do, you're not going to go into it. It's just a natural human behavior. So when you look at going into a job, when you land a job, like I said in the beginning, there's very little risk, right? There might be some time, there might be a little bit of money invested in going to land a job, but there's very little risk. But as time goes on, the risk of the job tends to go up. So generally what we see is that people tend to become more expensive to their corporations. The corporation's looking to do some type of reduction in force and kind of start looking at the bottom lines, things like that. And so generally what we'll see is as time goes on, the risk of the job goes up. Now, I used to know kind of the average tenure of a job. Back when I used to research it, it was about 2.5 to 3.5 years. It might be a little bit longer, it might be a little bit shorter now, but that was kind of the tenure of a job a few years ago. When you look at going into business, the greatest risk is in the beginning, okay? It's usually the time frame where there's more money going out than there is coming in. It's usually the time frame when you hear business owners putting a lot of blood, sweat, and tears going into the business. But generally what you'll see as time goes on, the risk of the business goes down, okay? And so let me grab another color here of a marker. Generally, there's some type of line in this time frame where suddenly on this side of the time horizon of owning the business, that's where you hear all the great stories about business ownership. It's where you see business owners, diversifying into other businesses, or they're enjoying the time off. The business is running on autopilot. But the question is, hey, in this beginning part where that red circle is, what is that like? And is that palatable to you? Is that, is that kind of risk there comfortable for you to take on to get what it is that you want long-term? So generally what I tell my clients, the difference between business ownership and a job is, in a job, you'll get what you want up front, but typically you won't get what you want long-term. Whereas in business ownership, it's just the opposite. You don't get what you want up front, but you get what you want long-term, okay? And so it's kind of a risk-reward type of thing. And look, if there wasn't any risk, most people would say, I'd rather own my own business if I could. But like I said, the unfortunate part about business ownership is that there is risk. Let me check the chat box here real quick. 23 and a half years. Okay. So going on to, so the rules are changing, and income security might be something of the past. So what about the economy right now? So if that's one of your concerns is, hey, is now kind of the right time to go into business ownership because of what's happening with economic conditions right now. One of the things you might want to look at are businesses that thrive in kind of all different type of economic conditions. So what you're looking at here are the different sectors that our clients have done over the decades, where no matter what's typically happened with the economy, they've done just fine. Yeah, there might have been little ups and downs, but typically they've done just fine. Okay. Are there some businesses that tend to be more recession resistant than others? Yes. Are there businesses that tend to be more risky in economic downturns? Yes. But again, what you're looking at here are businesses that our clients have done to thrive in all different types of economic conditions. Now, it doesn't mean that any of these businesses are right for you. All I'm trying to share with you is that, hey, are there sectors out there that tend to do well in various economic climates? And the answer is yes. Okay. So once you've decided, okay, I'm going to go into business, or hey, I want to look at going into business ownership. What are my different choices as far as going into business? So you can start a business from scratch, you can buy an existing business, or you can start a franchise. Those are basically the three different ways of going into business. So let's look at the pros and cons of each methodology. So starting a business from scratch. It is the way every single business on this planet started. All right, whether it's Lee Hecht Harrison or FranNet or McDonald's or Starbucks or Home Depot, it doesn't matter. Somebody had an idea and they created a business out of it, right? So that person, whoever it was, had to come up with the brand name. They had to come up with the systems. They had to come up with the accounting software. They had to come up with everything. So there's a lot of room for creativity. You have total control and you get to make all the decisions, and there can be a tremendous upside long-term. And you can build the business from the passion. The disadvantage is that you have to create all of that 100%. And so it's hard. Okay. And my hat is off to those people that start businesses from scratch, because that's what true entrepreneurship is all about. And the unfortunate part about going that route is that most businesses that start from scratch, in other words, it's just a concept in your head and you start a business out of it, they fail. Okay. The vast majority fail because it is very, very hard to do. All right. And the reason why it is, like I said, you got to create everything. It's usually a very slow ramp up time, usually limited financial capabilities to finance the business because it's an unproven business. And so they're just hard to do. Then the other option is to buy an existing business. Okay. So an existing business, what we're talking about here is a business that currently exists that is for sale out there. All right. It is probably the easiest and safest way to get into business ownership because it's a tangible asset. You're able to see how that business is operating in that territory right now. You can see whether it's thriving, whether it's doing well, maybe it's not doing well, and you can see how you can do it better, but it currently exists and you can see how it's running, right? So there's cash flow, there's actual financial results that you can look at. It might be attractive to lenders. There's a customer base already. The employees are already there. The systems are there. Maybe the owner's willing to do some seller financing. So there's a tremendous amount of advantages to buying an existing business. The disadvantages are, though, is why is that business really selling? If it's that good of a business, why is the seller selling it? What's the true cash flow of the business? Are you going to get the proper training and support from the current owner? Is there any hidden motives as to why the seller is really selling? Are the employees going to stick around? So the other hard thing that's not on this slide is that the general rule of thumb is about 2/3 of all businesses, when they sell, you and I never even knew that business was even for sale. Okay. And so the other 1/3, I'm sorry, going back to the 2/3. So the 2/3 that you and I never even knew the business was even for sale, those businesses tend to sell to friends, families, and acquaintances, or customers, whatever the case may be. There's kind of a saying out there that good businesses are bought, they are not sold. All right. When a business is sold, it means, hey, other people who knew about the business or knew the owner weren't really interested in it. And so how are they sold? So if you wanted to see kind of what I call kind of the MLS, a multiple listing service of businesses for sale, the #1 website to go to anywhere in the country is a website called bizbuysell.com. So it's BIZBUYSELL.com. All right. So again, that's kind of the MLS. So most business brokers, when they're selling a business, they will list it on bizbuysell.com. And you can sort it by criteria, you can sort it by investment level, you can sort it by industry, you can sort it by geography. Generally, what you will see, or kind of the comments I always hear from people on it, is that it tends to be a lot of junk out there. Okay, because that's that other 1/3 of businesses that people just passed on. All right, but it is the largest website to go to. The other option is to buy a franchise. All right, so buying a franchise, like I said, is probably what 95-98% of our clients do. Again, it's what we specialize in. But the reason why our clients want to buy a franchise is that there's, again, a lot of advantages. So you can suddenly get the name recognition. There's a system to follow. You can get the training support from not only the franchisor, but your fellow franchisees, a much lower failure rate. You can generally do it for lower cost. There's all kinds of different financing options, which we'll go into here in a little bit. There's disclosure. What I mean by disclosure is franchising is regulated by the Federal Trade Commission. And so you have to be properly disclosed on the franchise before you purchase it. And I'll kind of go into that here in a little bit. And then there's the franchise family. Like I mentioned earlier, I own other franchises as well. And a lot of times I won't reach out to the franchisor. I'll reach out to my fellow franchisees if I have a question, or if I have a concern, or if I need help on something, because they're in the trenches with me. So there's a lot of advantages to purchasing a franchise. However, there's disadvantages as well. The disadvantages are that not every industry is franchisable. Now, I've seen some crazy things franchised over the years, but not everything is franchisable. There is a structured operating system. So if you're a true entrepreneur, or you're the type of person who, when you see a business, you see all the reasons of why they're doing it wrong and all the reasons why you would do it differently, maybe franchising as a business format is not right for you, because franchising is about taking a business and duplicating it time and time and time again. It's about duplicating that system. You can generally only sell the products and systems of the franchisor. And then the other con, kind of the main con, is that there's an ongoing royalty. So in franchising, unlike other business formats, yes, you are given the trademarks, you are given the products, you are given the systems, you're given the training and support from the franchisor to help you succeed within the business. The con is you got to pay for it. All right. So that's the way the franchisors make their money. So a franchisor makes their money by you paying them an initial franchise fee, which is not the total cost of the business. So it is an additional cost. So a typical franchise fee is about, I would say, about $30,000 to $50,000 these days. And then so that's a one-time fee. And then there's also a royalty that's paid to the franchisor on a monthly basis. And it's usually a percentage of gross sales. So that percentage of gross sales is usually around 5 to 7% of gross sales will go back to the franchisor on a monthly basis. Okay. So let me kind of stop there for a second, have a drink of water. If you got any questions thus far, like I said, feel free to take yourself off of mute and ask away.
I have a question.
Right ahead.
When it comes to financial perspectives here, because I did this recently, so that's why I really wanted to join you, Blair, is the cost of creating your own versus buying a franchise versus buying a business that's for sale. What is the most cost? What's the best way to go about doing so and making that decision? Is it just free flow money, or I don't have any, so I have to be creative? What would you think would be the best opportunity for us here?
As far as financing, or just the overall cost of going into business?
Both.
Both. Okay, so the financing I'll get into here in a little bit. The cost of going into a business totally depends on the type of business you're going into. So you'll have various choices. So if you looked at more of a home-based, office-based type of business with little to no employees, shouldn't cost you a whole lot. probably somewhere between $30,000 and $80,000. Okay, total. If once you look at a business that has a physical storefront to it, so it has a physical location, generally you're going to look at costs of about $200,000 on up. Okay, because there's probably going to be some construction, there's probably going to be some leasehold improvements that need to be done. Suddenly now you have a lease for physical premises, all that good stuff. So you're probably looking at about $200,000 on up. Now, what you'll see in a slide here in a little bit is that the businesses that cost 30 to 80,000 can make just as much money, if not more, than the businesses that cost $200,000 or more. Okay, so if you're the type of person who says, hey, and this is a great way of closing risk, if you will, that window of risk is to, hey, if I don't have a whole lot of money going out, that means I don't have a whole lot of money at risk, right? And so one of the ways to do that is to look at what we call more service-based businesses that might be home or office-based with little to no employees.
That's exactly what I did during my layoff. Is I got laid off as a marketing and communications person, sitting in an office for 3 years during COVID, and started my own business literally a month ago. And then I got a new job. So I'm multitasking on both of those,
Yeah.
but it's doing the exact same thing with both situations. And mine is nowhere near that 30,000, 60,000, 80,000. I started with a new client of a couple thousand.
Yeah. Yeah. You can do it very affordably if you really want to. So,
Okay.
good.
Blair, I have a question.
Sure.
I'm actually looking at buying a Wild Birds Unlimited store that is already up and running.
Mhm.
And my concerns are that the owner has not kept up with what Wild Birds expects out of them. So
Yep.
I'm going to have to put a lot of money into upgrading their systems and the store itself.
Mhm.
And his purchase price is 200,000 for it, but he doesn't do any marketing. And anyway, I don't want to go into everything. My questions are, how do I value an existing store? Because I know it's not worth 200,000. I just have that in my gut, but how would I counter with a value back to him that would make sense, like if I could put it together. Sure. I have all his books for the past few years, and I know what it's been making over the years.
Yep. So generally a business like that, and I'm familiar with Wild Birds Unlimited.
I'm sure you are.
Yeah, we worked with them many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, that business should sell for probably right around 3 times EBITDA, or 3 times owner's discretionary cash flow or net income.
Okay.
So if it's making $100,000, it should sell for about $300,000. Now, is a totally different conversation, and I'm more than happy to do it offline if you want to call me afterwards.
Okay.
There's going to be deductions if you're like, hey, I got to spend X number of dollars to bring this business up to speed, and the franchisor is requiring it. That would be a negotiable term between you and the seller.
Okay. Earnings before interest and taxes, that's what EBITDA is, right?
Yep. Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
Amortization. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So 3 times that. Okay. Well,
right around there. So
yeah, no, I get, but I'm that way. I get the right around part. So, and it's been for sale for almost 2 years. Is there something else I should be looking at as well? It's not sold right away. So nobody's seen the value in it.
Yeah. So what I would do, Patty, just so we can keep marching along, is call me, and I'll walk you right through it on what to do.
Excellent. I love it.
Thank you. Yep, you bet. Because it's a long conversation. Like I said, when it comes to resales start to get complicated for exactly the reasons that I was talking about earlier. Okay, so in franchising, like I said, is regulated by the Federal Trade Commission, and the Federal Trade Commission is going to want to make sure that the franchisor provides to you what's called a franchise disclosure document. Sounds like some of you may have seen these since you're researching franchises already. They're generally about that thick. They're not the funnest reading material in the world, but it's the actual disclosure document on the company that you're specifically researching. So it's going to tell you all kinds of things. It's going to tell you what your rights are, what the franchisor's rights are, Do you get a protected territory? If so, what does that territory look like? It's going to give you a list of every single current franchisee, every franchisee that is sold, and every franchisee that has failed, broken down by state. So you can see exactly what's happening with a particular franchise within the area that you're looking. It'll also give you financial representations where the franchisor will share with you what's the average or in different methodologies, the financial performance of their franchisees. Because you as the buyer, look, you want to know how much money you're going to make in this business, right? So a lot of the franchisors right up front will provide that to you within their disclosure document. They'll tell you how long the agreement lasts, how do you terminate it, how do you sell it, how do you renew it. All of that is within the disclosure document. Now, you'll notice here that this part is highlighted right here, all right? And the reason why that is if you do your research correctly, you're going to want to spend a lot of your time not only talking to the franchisor, but you're going to want to spend a lot of time talking to the current franchisees, all right? And you're given the name, address, and phone number of every single one of their franchisees within the system. You're going to want to talk to some franchisees that are doing well, some that are doing average, maybe one or two that are having a tougher time than others. Talk to some that have similar backgrounds, similar experiences, similar skill sets as you, maybe similar towns and demographics that you may be in. And again, you'll be very surprised at how open the franchisees are in answering your questions. So you got to remember, the franchisees are not there to sell you the franchise, right? So they're behind the front lines. They'll tell you what it's actually like to run that business. And so it's a very, very good way of doing a lot of unbiased research on that particular franchise that you're researching. And the cool part is you can get the vast majority of your questions answered about the franchise to see if it's a good fit for you, how much money you can make, would the franchisees do it again, how would they do it differently, how's the support, how's the training. And the cool part is you haven't spent any money yet. You haven't spent a tremendous amount of time. You've done some research and stuff, but you haven't obligated yourself. You haven't signed any agreements. You haven't signed any checks. You haven't done anything. So we're just talking about doing research. And that's why talking to the franchisees is the most important part of researching these franchises. And like I said, you're given a list of all of them. All right. Different topic here. A lot of people ask me, hey, Blair, what's the biggest trends that are happening in franchising right now? So the biggest trends of what we see happening in franchising right now, and this has been a trend that's been happening for, I would say, 4 to 5 years, and we do not see this trend going away anytime soon. And that's right here, okay? Semi-absentee franchising. And so these are businesses that are designed for somebody to have a full-time job, designed for somebody to go get a full-time job, or maybe somebody wants to go into semi-retirement. In other words, they want to look at a business that is not full-time. It doesn't require all their time during the week, maybe 5 to 10 hours a week, 5 to 15 hours a week, okay? I own some semi-absentee franchises. It's just a great way of creating supplemental income, diversify your income, diversifying your financial portfolio. And most people think when they think about business ownership, they think about full-time businesses. I would say about 60% of our clients are purchasing semi-absentee franchises these days. And so if there is a trend within franchising, it's that. Okay. So there's some very, very cool businesses out there that are semi-absentee. So generally what you'll see on these semi-absentee businesses that they are generally have a physical location to them, not all of them, but they generally have a physical location in them. You'll have a general manager that runs the day-to-day operations of that business. Like I have a semi-absentee franchise about, I don't know, 2 miles away from here. There's a general manager that runs the day-to-day operation for me. And she reports to me on a weekly basis. We have a meeting at the location once a week. I'm able to look at the financial results of the business real time on my computer from anywhere in the world. I can actually pull up the cameras and see what's actually happening within the business. And like I said, I own multiples of these businesses. So, but there's a manager that's running the day-to-day operations, so I don't have to be in there. Okay. And, but I do spend advertising dollars to drive customers to that location. So the semi-absentee franchise that's how they get customers within the businesses, usually through online advertising, through Instagram, Facebook, Google, you name it. So there's all kinds of segments in these semi-absentee franchises, some that you're probably familiar with. So like we just take this segment right here, hair care. You've probably heard of like Supercuts, Great Clips, Sport Clips, Fantastic Sam's. Those are all franchises that are semi-absentee that you'll never see the owner in there, hardly ever. Maybe just stopping by to see how things are going. So then I guarantee you that owner had zero desire to be in hair care, doesn't want to touch a head of hair, doesn't want to do anything with it, but they wanted a semi-absentee business that was fairly recession resistant. They can get into multiple locations. They're good at managing teams of employees, those types of things. So that's where they landed on hair care as a segment. So again, this is just a sample of semi-absentee segments or sectors. Just know there's all kinds of them, but that is the biggest trend within franchising right now, which is very surprising to people. So you get to keep your job. Often your work for these semi-absentee owners is done after hours. You can monitor these businesses remotely from anywhere. A lot of times our clients will do franchises in other states or maybe even a state that they plan to move to in a few years. And it's a way to hedge against economic changes as well. So what are some of the myths associated with franchising? Well, typically what I'll do in kind of a live forum or a live session of one of these is I'll usually just start asking people just to start naming franchises to me. So let's actually do it. So take yourself off of mute. And if you don't mind, we'll see if this works. Just start naming franchises to me. And I need their actual names.
Weight
Wild
Watchers,
Birds Unlimited.
Okay.
McDonald's,
Okay.
every fast food corporation.
Tropical Smoothie.
Tropical Smoothie.
Planet Fitness.
Okay.
Dutch Brothers.
Okay. See if you guys can do one or two more.
Orange Theory Fitness.
Okay.
F45 Fitness.
Good. All right. Let's stop there. All right. What was the common denominator between about half of those franchises?
They're well known or pretty well known.
Well, I think I heard it. They were food. Okay. About half of them were food. So when most people think of franchising, they think of food. They think of the McDonald's, the Subways, the Burger Kings of the world. And the other thing that I heard, and this is very, very common when I ask that question, I want to know, there was probably somewhere between 7 and 10 businesses named. And usually that's about where the group will stop. They start running out of names to mention after about 7 or 10. And that's out of a sea of about 3,500. Okay. So there are thousands and thousands of choices out there. And what I want you to know is that just don't think it's fast food and retail. There's all kinds of different sectors out there and all kinds of things to choose from. I heard some fitness ones like Planet Fitness, Orange Theory. I think I heard F45, Wild Birds Unlimited. So those are all non-food franchises and, some very, very good choices out there. Franchise exceed because the quality of the product. So you as the buyer of this business, what you have to be a believer in is the business system, okay? Because that's what you are writing a check for. So you have to be a believer in all of these things because that's the business, okay? Your customers have to be a believer in the actual product or service that you're selling. You are buying this. Okay, you're buying the marketing, you're buying the sales, the operations, the accounting systems, because that's the guts of the business. So that's what you are going to research. And so long as those things pan out, the product or the service should pan out. All right. Because if these things don't, there's not going to be a product or service to sell. So that you have to be a believer in the business system because that's what you are purchasing. Successful franchise emerged in new industry with no new competitors. Look, there's time and time again, people come to me once they realize that I specialize in franchise and they go, hey, Blair, what's the latest, greatest, hottest new franchise right now? What you have to know is that franchising, usually good franchise emerge from industries that are already in existence. In other words, there's probably already mom and pops that are already doing it. Just the franchisor found a better way to do it. And they're able to use their names, their products, their purchasing power, their service power to enter segments to create dominant competition. So that's where franchisors generally emerge from. Now, here's where I'm going to go into financing. So I would say our average client right now is probably spending around $220,000 to $250,000 on their business. Now, that does mean that the vast majority of our clients are purchasing storefront businesses. I do expect that to change over the next 1 to 2 years. I expect to see a shift of our clients going to more service-oriented, home-based, office-based, maybe light industrial-based types of businesses, to have that cost of the business go down and therefore lower risk, just because of economics going forward. So what I wanted to share with you is that let's just say that you're looking at a business that costs $200,000, and that includes the franchise fees, the training fees, all the equipment, some working capital, the construction cost to get it built and up and running. So about a third of it, okay, will be your money. So if you're looking at a $200,000 business, that means you'll need to come to the table with about $60,000 of your own funds, and then the banks will usually finance the remaining 2/3. Okay. Now that assumes you have good credit ratings, that assumes you have good financials behind you, all kinds of other things, but financing is still relatively available out there, but you do have to come with finance or with your own money to the table to purchase the business. And the general rule of thumb is about 25 to 30% will be your money. Now, there's all kinds of different ways to finance these businesses. All right. So you can obviously have the money yourself. You can have friends, relatives help you finance the business, borrow money from friends and relatives. You can do a home equity line of credit. So a lot of people still have a lot of home equity within their homes. You can get a HELOC. You can get a HELOC within about 2 to 3 weeks. Yes, rates have gone up on HELOCs, but they're still relatively affordable. They're still more affordable than a small business loan by a few percentage points, actually. And you can do with the money as you please. And so a lot of our clients use a HELOC to finance their businesses. You can do seller financing if it's a resale. You can do a portfolio line of credit. In other words, if you have stocks, mutual funds that sit in a non-qualified account, in other words, a non-retirement account, you can do a line of credit against those stocks and mutual funds without selling the stocks and mutual funds. So it's just like a line of credit on your house. It's a line of credit against those stocks and mutual funds. So it's, again, a very easy, quick source of financing. And you can usually get that done within a couple of weeks, and the interest rates there are still very attractive. Then there's this last option right here. It's called the ROBS program. Okay, most people have never heard of the ROBS program. So it's an IRS program that allows you to use retirement funds for the purchase of a business without early withdrawal fees and without penalties. Okay, so it comes from the ERISA Act of 1973. It's an IRS act. So ROB stands for Rollover for Business Startup. So again, it just allows you to use retirement funds if you want. So there's a lot of people out there right now who say, look, if I could pull money out of the financial markets right now, and so I'm not at the mercy of the financial markets, and invest it in my business, I would like to do that, so long as I don't get early withdrawal fees and without penalties, and use the money from my retirement accounts. Again, you're allowed to do it. Doesn't mean you have to. I'm just saying, hey, it's a source. You can also do a blend of all these things. You can say, hey, I'm going to use some money from my retirement account. I'm going to use some home equity line and a small business loan. So you can do blends of all that. So there's a few different companies out there in the industry. We have zero affiliation with these companies, but these are the 3 big companies within the business and franchise industry that do the vast majority of the financing for small businesses. Okay, feel free to reach out to them. I'm more than happy to introduce you to them, or if you need an introduction of somebody directly to talk to, they can pre-qualify you. They can chat with you. They're usually very familiar with these businesses. And they, again, it'd be like getting pre-qualified on purchasing a home. Same thing here. You can get pre-qualified for purchasing a business, and they kind of share with you what's going to be the best methodology for you. As I mentioned earlier, there's no correlation between the cost of the business and how much money it can make. Now, this is an odd thing to hear because we're so used to the more money we spend on like a house or a car, probably a nicer house or car we're going to get. That is not true here. Okay, so just trust me, it holds true. Is industry experience required? No. So generally the franchisors are going to want you to have the skill sets necessary to properly run their business and their systems, but you don't have to have actual background experience within their business. Okay, so like Orange Theory Fitness, somebody mentioned that name earlier. Orange Theory Fitness doesn't want you to be a fitness instructor to join their business. They want you to be, a good business person. They want you to be interested in fitness, but it doesn't mean that you need to be a fitness instructor, okay? Because you're gonna hire fitness instructors to be your employees. It doesn't mean that you need to do it, okay? So the franchisor is going to give you all the training and support that you need. So how do you find the right fit for yourself? Well, you want to ask yourself, hey, am I willing? Why am I doing this? Am I comfortable following a franchisor system? What's affordable to me? What's my risk tolerance? And hey, what would I enjoy? What would I have fun doing? And then you want to start identifying your goals, okay? What are your goals 5, 10, 20 years from now? Because the whole reason for doing this is not only to solve your why, but to also get you to your goals. And every single one of us on this meeting have different wants, desires, reasons as to why we're doing this in different goals. So some of these might be more challenged. It might be building equity for retirement, time for family and interest. That's a big one for me personally. So for example, I have a 18-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son. I coached every single one of my son's sports. Okay. I was a head coach for all of them. That was very important to me. And so I needed businesses that were very flexible in time. And so, because it was important for me to do it. So again, try to figure out, what's important to you. What skill sets do you bring to the table? So in other words, what are you really good at doing that you can capitalize on? So whether it's managing teams, customer service, operations, sales and marketing, that's, you want to figure out what are you really good at doing. All right. Now, to help you go through some of this, you're like, hey, is there a tool out there that can help you get some of this done? Yes, there is. So we have an assessment tool that's specifically designed for going into business and franchise ownership. So it's going to look at your background, your skill sets. It's going to take a sample financial snapshot. It's going to ask you all kinds of different questions of what you think you'd like to see in the business. It's going to look at some personality stuff. It takes about 20 minutes to do. It's totally free. And it'll produce about a 12-page report for both you and I. And you and I will go through that report together and kind of see, hey, does it see any red flags about you going into business ownership? And if it doesn't, what types of businesses and franchise are going to be the best fit for you? Not the specific names, but what types of franchise are going to be a good fit for you. So I can get you a link to this assessment. All of you, you don't have to take out your phones to do this QR code right now, because all of you will get a copy of this recording and you can just go to this slide, take a snapshot of this QR code, and it'll get you right to that assessment tool if you want it. Okay. Or if you want to chat afterwards, you want to schedule some time with me. If you have questions, anything like that, happy to go over and answer any questions for you too prior to doing that assessment. Once you do the assessment, then we're going to want to get together and build a business model together. So a business model is, all right, we're going to build a recipe together of what does your ideal business look like? How many employees, budget? Do you want something home-based, office-based, retail-based? Are we looking at that semi-absentee option? Are we looking at more of a full-time business? How do you want to grow the business? Do you want to work with the general public? Do you want to work with other businesses? All kinds of different questions, okay? And you may have the answer to some of these, you may not, and that's totally normal, all right? But we want to start from somewhere. And kind of the analogy that I give to this is most of you probably own your own homes, or even if you go rent a home or apartment, it doesn't matter. You first sit down and figure out, what is it that I want? How many bedrooms do I want? What's my budget? What school districts do I want to be in? Do I want a 3-car garage, 4-car garage, no garage? Do I want a pool in the backyard? How close do I want to be to certain amenities? And then you start looking at homes and apartments and what have you that best fit that criteria, and you end up striking a deal on the one that's the best deal, but is the closest fit to what you want, right? It's the same thing here. It's just probably a list of criteria that you've never thought about before. So this is something that I'll help you do. We'll sit down and we'll create this together. And then once we have this business model and we have your assessment, now we both know what it is that we're trying to find. Okay. And that's when we get to work as FranNet to help you look at the right businesses that fit you and what it is that you're trying to find. And then we're going to coach you through the whole research process. So there's a guidebook that a lot of our clients use. It's called the Roadmap to Success, and we'll make sure you get a copy of this. And it's going to lay out all the questions you need to be asking yourself, you need to be asking others. It'll lay out the whole research process for you, so that you know kind of what you should be doing next within this 2 to 4 month research process. So you're looking at actual business model right here. So again, this is something that you and I are going to build together. And once we have that, then we know what it is that we're trying to find. There's a few books for those readers out there. If you want to just kind of learn more about franchising, these are the books that we suggest. The number one book that we have found is called Street Smart Franchising. It follows our research processes very, very well. We try to give, it's kind of hard to come by these days, but we try to give a copy of it to every single one of our clients. We also know the local franchise attorneys, accountants. So whether you're in Idaho or Montana or Nevada, which is probably where most people are on this meeting today, we have all the professional advisors within those states or wherever you might be in the country, it doesn't matter. Happy to give you those resources to help you get this done. Okay. So there's my contact information. Let me look at the clock here. I got about another 5 minutes or so. So if there's anything that we didn't cover or something you have a question about, now's your chance to kind of take yourself off of mute and ask away. But as far as next steps, if you're like, hey, this is something I further want to pursue, feel free to call me directly or email me, or use that QR code to get directly to those assessment tools. If you call me, it'll come right to this cell phone right there. That's the number to this cell phone. So more than happy to chat. So again, if there's something we didn't cover, I got a few minutes and we can go over it. So feel free to take yourself off of mute.
Blair,
Anything
thank you
at
for
all?
this.
You bet, Pamela.
This is very helpful.
Good. Any questions out there? Okay, very good. Again, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Since all of you are LHH Harrison clients, I've helped hundreds and hundreds of LHH Harrison clients go into business and franchise ownership. You can connect with them, ask away, anything you want. So again, thank you, everybody. It's pretty cold for most of us, as you know, here on the West Coast with this storm coming through. But anyway, stay warm. Hope that is helpful. Feel free to connect with me or call me, whatever it is that you need. Okay. Thank you.
There.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Blair,
Blair.
I have a late question for you.
Yeah, go right ahead.
I've been approached by another company selling franchises.
Sure.
or
Probably on
looking
LinkedIn
at
is my
franchises.
guess.
So what's the biggest difference from one company to the other?
Whereabouts do you live?
Sioux Falls, South Dakota, town of about 200,000, surrounding 30 miles, probably 400,000 residents.
Sure. And there once before. So I'm not 100% familiar with Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I'll be honest with you. But the main differences that you'll see is we will only work with about 250 different franchisors at any given point in time. So we pre-screen the companies that we work with. We're the ones that have been doing this the longest. We actually invented this industry of helping people purchase franchises. Most franchisors will tell you that, hey, if you're working with FranNet, you're in very, very good hands. As Chip said, hey, I've helped many LHH Harrison clients over the years. You're in good hands. So mainly experience, and I've personally been doing this for about 30 years. So mainly, like I said, experience, track record, and pre-screening of the companies that we look at.
Very good.
You're welcome. Any other questions out there? All right, everybody. Enjoy the day. Stay warm.